if you strip away every atom, every quark, and every fundamental law of physics, what is actually left holding the universe together?
That is a massive question to start with.
Right. But I mean, we are so conditioned to think of reality as this collection of measurable building blocks. You look at a rock under a microscope, and science points at the silicon and says, there it is. That is what reality is built
And
on.
yeah, the physical proof.
Exactly. But what if that entirely misses the point? What if the physical stuff we see is just, well, a shadow, like an illusion, and the real universe operates on an entirely different set of rules?
It's a profound shift in perspective. Instead of looking through a microscope, you're basically being asked to look at the invisible architecture of existence itself.
And to do that, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into a really fascinating philosophical and spiritual text from November 2006. It's written by an author named Xiu Feng.
Right. And it's titled Consciousness, Structure, and Energy are the three elements of the universe.
Which is quite the title. But this isn't just a thought experiment. It is actually a foundational document for the philosophy of Life Genuine.
Yeah.
For you listening, Life Genuine is essentially a spiritual community and a philosophical movement. It blends elements of Eastern mysticism, Western theology, and its own really unique cosmic framework.
Which means we are dealing with some incredibly sweeping religious and moral claims today.
Oh, absolutely.
The text attempts to build a unified theory of everything, connecting the mundane, everyday world you and I live in, all the way up to a supreme divine intelligence.
And as an impartial observer exploring this with you, the listener,
Yeah.
it's wild to see how uncompromising the author is about these ideas.
Very uncompromising.
Yeah. So our mission on this deep dive isn't to endorse these viewpoints or take sides on the theology. We are just here to act as your guides, mapping out the architecture of this specific, ambitious framework so you can see exactly how the author connects, like a flower in a garden, to the consciousness of God.
It's quite the journey.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the most tangible piece of the puzzle, right? Structure.
Right. The author begins by establishing the physical world through this concept of structure. The text argues that the very first thing we notice in the boundless universe is material structure.
Okay.
Without it, material doesn't even exist in a recognizable way.
Yeah, the text uses the example of identifying a peony among hundreds of other flowers.
Or spotting a specific friend in a massive crowded stadium.
Right. You recognize them because their physical structure is distinct. But it isn't just about recognition, is it? I mean, the author seems to be saying that structure is the ultimate filter for reality itself.
Exactly. The author's arguing that structure dictates the form and function of absolutely everything. The marvelous spectacles of life only differ because their structural differences dictate it.
Wow.
But a structure on its own is entirely empty. It requires the second element to animate it, which is energy.
Okay, so structure and energy.
Yes. According to this framework, the universe is swimming in an infinite ocean of invisible energy. But that energy remains completely undetectable until it attaches to a structure geometrically.
Let me test a metaphor here to make sure we are locking into the text's logic.
Go for it.
Is the text saying structure is basically like a sponge and energy is the water?
That's a good way to look at it.
Like the water is just floating around everywhere, completely neutral and formless. But when you drop the sponge into it, the water rushes in and takes the shape of the sponge's internal pores.
That is a great starting point, but the text demands we take it a step further.
Okay.
It isn't just that the sponge fills with generic water. The author argues that different structures absorb different, very specific energies based entirely on their geometry.
Oh, I see.
Imagine if the sponge's pores were shaped in such a way that they only allowed liquid gold to enter while repelling regular water.
Right, like a sorting mechanism.
Exactly. The invisible energy of the universe is neutral, but the physical geometry of a structure acts as a cosmic tuning fork. It only resonates with and captures the specific frequency of energy that matches its shape.
So it's a mechanism of capture that really explains the practical examples the author uses.
Yeah, like the solar cookers?
Right. The text mentions solar cookers and water heaters. A solar cooker doesn't heat water through magic. It works strictly because its parabolic structure is a mathematical geometry designed to trap solar radiation.
If you change the shape, it stops capturing that specific energy.
Yeah, and the author scales that exact logic to the animal kingdom too. Like, why do flies and bees or tigers and sheep consume completely different types of food?
Modern science would obviously point to evolution or genetics,
Sure.
but this text argues it is entirely due to their digestive structures.
Which is wild.
The physical geometry of a tiger's stomach creates a void that only the energy of meat can fill. The structure itself demands a specific energy to survive.
What's fascinating here is how the text applies this mechanistic view of reality to agriculture.
Oh, the farming example.
Yeah, the author points to the practice of experienced farmers rotating their crops.
Oh.
I mean, we all know that you don't grow the exact same crop in the same soil year after year.
But look at why, through the lens of this philosophy. The farmer isn't just managing dirt. The farmer is manipulating cosmic energy filters.
That's such an interesting way to phrase it.
Well, the soil contains a baseline of neutral energies, right? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium.
Uh-huh.
Different plant structures are essentially different geometrical machines.
Mm-hmm.
A corn plant structure demands a massive influx of nitrogen energy.
Right, so if you leave that same structure in the field continuously, it just exhausts that specific frequency of energy.
Exactly. By rotating the crops, you're swapping out the structural filters, allowing the underlying energy field to rebalance.
The structure dictates the flow of energy. That makes sense within this framework. We have structure as the machine and energy as the fuel. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because the author doesn't stop at nature. The text suddenly makes this massive pivot away from plants and tigers and points directly at human creations.
Yeah. The text asks us to observe our cities. Consider the high-rise buildings, the intricate designs of clothing, the artistry of women's makeup.
And supermarkets, right?
Exactly. When you walk into a massive supermarket and look down the aisles, you are seeing an overwhelming, almost chaotic variety of goods. The author poses a deceptively simple question. Who created all of this?
And the immediate answer is human beings.
But the text aggressively challenges how we define that creation. It asks, were these things created by people's hands and feet?
Which feels like a trick question because obviously hands built the skyscrapers.
But the author says no. Hands and feet didn't build anything. Human consciousness built them.
Right.
The physical body is relegated to the status of a mere tool. Without consciousness directing them, hands and feet are just inert, fleshy structures. They are incapable of generating a skyscraper or designing a supermarket aisle. This is the pivotal moment where the author introduces the third and absolute supreme element of the universe.
Consciousness.
Yes, we move from what structure is to the underlying mechanism of how structure is actually generated.
But I have to push back on the author's logic here just a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
The text establishes consciousness, structure, and energy as the big three eternal elements of the universe. Yet the moment consciousness is introduced, the author starts severely downgrading the other two.
How so?
Well, the text literally argues that because energy is neutral, like air or water that can be directed by any consciousness, we shouldn't actually attach much importance to it. How can something be an eternal pillar of the universe but also not important?
Because the author views reality as a strict chain of causality. Think back to your sponge metaphor.
Okay.
If energy is the water and structure is the sponge, consciousness is the mind that intentionally designs the microscopic pores of that sponge. The author argues that you shouldn't obsess over the water, because if you design the sponge correctly, the water has no choice but to enter it. The energy is a captive audience to the structure.
And the structure is a captive audience to consciousness.
Exactly. To illustrate this mechanism of effortless attraction, the text introduces a beautiful, poetic rule.
Oh, the fragrant flowers one.
Yes. Fragrant flowers attract butterflies.
It's an evocative phrase, but what is the actual mechanism the author is implying there?
The mechanism is inevitability. You don't have to spend your time running around the garden chasing butterflies.
Which represent the energy.
Right. And you don't even need to obsess over the physical petals of the flower, which is the structure. The focus must be entirely on the essence, the consciousness that dictates the flower's design.
Okay, I follow.
If you cultivate the right consciousness, it automatically generates the corresponding structure. Once that structure exists, the fragrant flower, the specific energy, the butterfly, is magnetically drawn to it by the laws of geometry we discussed earlier.
So it is a cosmic domino effect. If consciousness is the first domino, everything else falls into place automatically.
That explains why the author becomes so prescriptive. The text insists that because consciousness is the absolute root of reality, we must unify all thoughts, all beliefs, and all religions into one uniform system.
It calls for unifying into the one consciousness.
Yes. The author views competing belief systems as competing chaotic blueprints. If consciousness builds reality, then a fragmented human consciousness builds a fragmented, miserable reality.
So the only way to achieve harmony is to synchronize the first domino across all of humanity.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean when we zoom out from humanity and look at the cosmos? Because the author has walked us from the structure of a flower to the construction of a building, establishing that human consciousness creates human structures.
Right.
But then the text makes a breathtaking philosophical leap.
A huge leap. The author points to the infinite variety of material forms in the universe. The thousands of postures of life, the planets, the stars, the ecosystems.
Yeah.
If a supermarket requires a human consciousness to organize its structure, the author argues, then the staggering complexity of the universe must have an organizing consciousness behind it.
The logic is rigidly consistent. I'll give them that. If structure requires consciousness, and the universe has structure, the universe has a consciousness.
And the text does not leave this as some vague, abstract force. It explicitly identifies this universal consciousness as the greatest creator, or God.
And finding this core consciousness is presented as the ultimate panacea for the human condition.
Absolutely. The text claims that once you trace the stream back to this specific headwater, all of life's unsolvable problems just evaporate.
Wow.
The misty becomes clear, the complex becomes simple. It is framed as the literal transmutation of misery into joy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of Life Genuine's specific doctrines, this is where the author formally introduces their core mandate.
Yeah, the text explicitly states that the ultimate path is to revere the greatest creator and to take the way of the greatest creator.
And this isn't offered as like a helpful suggestion for a peaceful life. It is defined as the absolute non-negotiable path to heaven.
Which brings us to the stark, black and white morality that underpins this entire cosmological framework. The author uses a specific term here, a touchstone.
Right, a touchstone.
Yeah.
Historically, a touchstone is a dark piece of stone used to test the purity of precious metals like gold or silver by drawing a streak across it.
Exactly. In this text, revering the greatest creator is the touchstone for testing reality itself.
And as an impartial reader, the language the author uses here is jarringly severe.
It really is.
This is where the philosophy of universal harmony suddenly bears its teeth. The text claims that this touchstone is the sole metric for determining good from evil, truth from falsity, and beauty from ugliness.
Yeah.
If a state, a political party, a religion, or theory does not align with this specific consciousness, the author doesn't just call them mistaken.
No.
The text brands them as fundamentally evil and ugly.
The intolerance for deviation is built into the framework's physics. If the universe is a perfect structure designed by a supreme consciousness, then any human ideology that contradicts that consciousness isn't just a different opinion. It is a structural glitch.
A glitch.
The text goes so far as to label those who stray from this path as superfluous tumors growing on the body of humanity.
That is heavy. A tumor is a rogue biological structure, right?
Right.
It absorbs energy selfishly and destroys the host.
Right.
So the author is using their own logic of structure and energy to justify the elimination of opposing beliefs. It claims these tumors will be eliminated because they disrupt the cosmic geometry.
That is a terrifyingly absolute filter.
It really is.
But this raises an important question, though. We are talking about this supreme consciousness, the greatest creator, as if it is an invisible architect sitting outside the universe.
Yeah, like looking down on it.
But how does the text say this consciousness actually interacts with the physical world? How does a non-material thought build a physical galaxy?
Oh, right. The author provides a fascinating synthesis of Western theology and Eastern philosophy to explain that mechanism.
Yeah.
The text states that while consciousness itself is non-material, the consciousness of the greatest creator specifically manifests as the Tao.
The Tao. That is a massive ancient concept in Eastern thought. It's generally understood as the natural order of the universe, or the way.
Right.
The author aggressively adapts this concept, defining the Tao as the literal, omnipresent, structural consciousness of God.
The text describes the Tao as running through all tangible and intangible time and space. It isn't just in the physical stuff we can touch. It permeates the non-material world as well.
Yeah, the author even explicitly mentions that this consciousness governs both the positive universe and the negative universe. It is the inescapable grid of reality.
Because this grid is absolute, the text categorizes every single entity in existence based entirely on where their consciousness falls on that grid.
It lists a sprawling hierarchy of beings. You have ignorant people, deities, mortals, sages, and celestials.
But it doesn't stop at humans and angels, does it?
No, it includes goblins, demons, devils, ghosts, and monsters.
And here's the mechanical genius of the author's argument. What separates a mortal from a goblin or a sage from a celestial?
Right. What's the difference?
It isn't their physical bodies. It isn't the energy they possess. The text insists that the sole differentiator is their state of consciousness.
Wow.
Because consciousness is the first domino that builds structure. If you adopt the consciousness of a goblin, you will inevitably structurally become one. Your consciousness dictates your form of life and your method of survival.
It completely inverts the materialist worldview. Science tells us that our physical structure, our brains, our biology, generates our consciousness. This text argues that our consciousness generates our physical structure. Therefore, the ultimate goal of life isn't to accumulate energy or build physical monuments.
The goal, according to the text, is to grasp this key link of consciousness. By putting all your emphasis on revering the Creator, everything else falls into place effortlessly.
Remember, the fragrant flowers attract the butterflies.
Exactly. You get twice the results with half the effort. But the end game here isn't just a peaceful life on Earth, is it?
Not at all. The culmination of this philosophy is the pursuit of immortality.
Right.
The text claims that by aligning your consciousness perfectly with the Tao, you transcend your current physical geometry. You attain the life structure of a higher level space.
Yeah, higher level space.
Yeah, the author refers to this as reaching the other shore, realizing an ideal, eternal form of existence that is no longer bound by the heavy, decaying structures of this material world.
It is a dizzying, wild journey of logic. To summarize the massive architectural blueprint we've just explored for the listener, the author forces us to look at the visible structures around us.
Like the geometry of a solar cooker trapping heat.
Or the digestive tract of a tiger demanding meat.
Yeah.
We see how structure acts as a rigid filter, pulling specific invisible energies from the universe.
Yeah.
But then, by examining human creations like supermarkets and skyscrapers, the text proves that consciousness is the invisible hand that designs the structure.
And from there, it is a straight line to the cosmos.
Right. If humans build cities, a universal consciousness, the Tao, the greatest creator, must be orchestrating the infinite structures of reality.
And your alignment with that creator is the only thing determining whether you become a celestial being or a superfluous tumor slated for cosmic removal.
It is a framework that attempts to lock physics, agriculture, human commerce, and absolute theology into a single unbreakable chain of cause and effect. It demands that we place unseen intention ahead of visible matter.
And for you listening, grappling with a text like this is a fascinating exercise. Whether you find this framework deeply resonant or whether you recoil from its absolutist black and white morality, it forces you to interrogate your own baseline assumptions.
Absolutely.
How do you personally categorize reality? When you look at the world, do you see a random collision of atoms and energy, or do you suspect there's an invisible organizing intention shaping the sponge?
It certainly highlights how comforting the materialist microscope can be compared to the overwhelming demands of a cosmic structural morality.
Definitely.
But there is one final, incredibly provocative detail from the very end of Shuofeng's text that I want to leave you with.
Oh, this part.
Yeah. After laying out this massive philosophy, claiming that physical reality is essentially a byproduct and that cultivating this specific cosmic consciousness is the only legitimate path, the author brings it crashing back down to earth.
Yeah, they do.
The text states a firm belief that all government officials, industrial leaders, religious figures, and corporate bosses actually understand these principles very well.
It is a deeply unsettling claim to drop right at the finish line.
It changes the entire context of modern power. So I want you to ponder that as you go about your day.
Yeah, think about the world as it operates right now.
With its massive wealth inequalities, its towering corporate structures, and its political machinations, what would society actually look like if every global leader and every billionaire CEO secretly operated under the absolute belief that physical reality is just an illusion?
And that cultivating their own cosmic consciousness was the only true path to success.
It makes you look at the societal structures they were building and the incredible amounts of human energy they're absorbing in a completely different light.
It brings us full circle. We desperately want to believe the institutions governing our lives are built on tangible, rational foundations.
We want the bedrock to be solid science and measurable physics. But when you view the towering, chaotic structures of our modern society through the lens of this text, you have to wonder, are we just staring blindly at the sponge, completely ignoring the invisible hand that designed it to trap our energy?